Hi everyone, hope you're keeping well again. Back for another video. It's been a while, I know, but I've been giving this one some thought and been meaning to do it for a while, and I'm pretty excited actually. I'm going to call this one the Old Moon Evolution and the dual reality that I think humans are faced with and have been faced for quite a while regarding non-human entities and history of how we've come to this situation. This is just a theory. I'm not saying it's true, and I'm certainly not saying I know it all. Um, the people that have helped me, come to these ideas is Rudolf Steiner, um, and what I briefly know about L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, the rocket engineer and occultist. L. Ron Hubbard, Scientologist. A little bit about Aleister Crowley and his magical workings. But first off, I want to say what a big thing that inspired me was Thomas Sheridan's recent Von, which was connected with the moon landings, the dark side of the moon, and the magical rituals and workings of Jack Parson and L. Ron Hubbard in order to achieve that physical triumph, and also the Moonchild ritual, which I'm really fascinated with. Um, Another one was Thomas's documentary about Jack Parsons. That was fascinating as well. That really opened up a whole can of worms. And I think I do have a bit of a unique spin and a unique theory on this. So where do I start? I'll start with Rudolf Steiner, because he opened me up to this with his well, I wouldn't call it a theory with him. I'd call it his own personal insight and understanding about what he calls the old moon evolution. I was looking through some Steiner videos and was trying to find the video that he spoke of it, but he's made so many like books, and it's hours and hours kind of researching. Um, but I do remember the basics, and I've made notes as usual. Um, I'm not going to fish through these notes as I talk to you. So going back to the old moon evolution, I mentioned this in one of the videos. I think it was called Native Fairy Veneration, something like that, about how these beings were once in direct communication with us, that they were not separate from us and we weren't separate from them. When we existed in the non-physical, when we didn't have these denser bodies, right? We existed with these disincarnated spirits because we were the same. So according to Steiner, they're our ancestors. I'm sure I mentioned that in that video, roughly anyway. Yeah, so going back, so we had interaction with these kinds of beings before we were physically incarnated on the earth, and I think he's saying that it's before the earth was actually formed as we physically know it. And their communication was basically, yeah, it was almost like the dream state. I think he was saying that when we go to sleep, we go into that old moon evolution state, and our intentions are manifest very quickly in our imagination, and we deal in thought forms and things like that. Obviously, we don't deal in language and words, and the logic that we developed when we came into these bodies takes a backseat. Um, and so that's important. And I've got two sides of notes here, so I'm going to switch from one to the other. Because again, I was looking through Rudolf Steiner's writings, and you have here, according to Steiner, facts about the astral world. I've made some rough notes. Basically, the videos I've been watching is a guy reading from Steiner's work, his books and stuff. So he's quoting Steiner and stuff, but it's basically here. It says, when a thought happens inside us, it reaches out into beings of the astral world. It streams out. So he's saying that our thoughts and our intentions, I think, and our desires, even right to this day, they stream out and they connect with dozens of these astral beings. And most people are completely unaware of this. So I'd say we influence them, but I think they influence us as well. But it's a very unconscious process now. Yeah, so it says the astral world is populated by lots of beings, as is on Earth. And basically, say 1,000 humans or more could connect to one astral being if they have the same desire and intention. So like the concept of justice. So like maybe like a race, he's saying here, of people can have this concept of justice, and that can be reached and felt by this one specific being that resonates with that. So he's saying here the contents of her soul connects to these astral beings. So be it justice, courage, love. It's what he calls streams. We're streaming out and connecting energetically to these beings. So it says here also, like a person can lose direct mastery of what he streams. So if you have, we all have friends and relationships and partners, and if we become mentally upset or mentally ill, we could even our emotions can run askew, even if we don't know we're channeling these beings directly. If our emotions run away with us, that can cause chaos within ourselves, but also within the astral realm, I think he's saying. Saying that we lose our center of awareness, we don't have mastery over these streams. And basically, yeah, we're not inside our skins. We span out into other worlds, like a whole network of entities. That's who we connect to. And that is very interesting just in itself, just how we still have these relationships with these beings, but it's for most part very unconscious. So continuing on with these other certain notes. So the moon beings are our ancestors, and there came a point when we descended into matter, and then we descended into these bodies and went into this earth realm, and so we fell away from the old moon evolution. While many of the beings, the disincarnated beings that we would chose to stay in that form of existence. But according to Steiner, some of them, followed us to the Earth evolution when we were in these physical bodies, yet they didn't incarnate with us. They were just watching us and guiding us. And they were felt but not seen by us. And we didn't need an explanation, like we didn't want to humanize them and give them a form. We just accepted them, and we felt them within our hearts and in our beings when they were reaching out a hand and influencing us, a friendly hand. And also when we observed natural phenomena within nature, we would say, well, that's just the spirits at work, which I find very interesting as well. But there was a point. Oh, yeah, here we go. This is right on topic. Yeah, so more Steiner, as I was saying, the moon at one time is united with the Earth. That at a certain point in time, the physical moon separated from the Earth. Okay, and when it happened, those beings that were guiding us left, because basically it was a natural part of evolution to leave us on our own with our own thoughts and make it on our own. You know, there wasn't going to be any more evolution if they kept intervening. But before that, we had this direct relationship and acceptance of them in our own way. And these beings, they basically, yeah, they left and they existed on the actual physical moon, right? Which is important, and I believe they still reside today, according to Steiner's teachings. Okay. Yeah, again, so more notes. They were able to receive the teachings of these physical beings without seeing them. They heard them in their souls, as I said, and basically, I think these spirits believed that, yeah, man needed his own independence to evolve, as I said, in order to try and reach spiritual peak, to climb into the spiritual world, you know, within this realm, within these bodies, and reach understanding. So we were left to pursue our own spiritual journey and evolution. We needed freedom, basically. So yeah, so these disincarnated beings literally dwelt on the actual physical moon. Another thing that I thought of was Thomas Sheridan believing that we humans made the moon, that we actually willed it into existence with our own consciousness, which is something very similar to, I think, to what Steiner's explaining here. I find that one interesting. Another thing he says, which is very interesting, is that when we die, I mean, when we leave these physical bodies, when we have physical death temporarily, we meet these beings, and when we pass through the gate of death, we actually rejoin them for a period of time. And so we come together again in that realm after death. So and the moon reality, he's saying, is even more real than the Earth one. It's even more vivid and intense, apparently. And when we sleep and we dream, we can enter that kind of state again, as I said. Yeah, so these beings split, they left for the Earth, and yeah, I have a theory. That when this split happened, let's say, yeah, you had this consciousness divide within man of intellects and the subconscious, right? So you had this barrier kind of separating communication from these beings and us. But when the physical moon, much later, um, was was formed, these beings, they actually took on a physicality of their own, like we did. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if Steiner explained this as well. Maybe he believes that they did, but it makes sense because they have their own kind of planet now. So even though they're would be, say, inorganic, I'm not saying they're physical. Steiner makes it clear they're not. They're all inorganic, but they have a physicality, and that made me think of, if you haven't heard of him, John Lash, and his theory of the archons, that they're inorganic life forms and that they're older than us human beings. And they've been here. They've occupied this whole solar system, and they do have a technology and they do have an intelligence, but they can't inhabit our reality. They can't. Well, they can, but very briefly. But they can't live in this atmosphere and exist for very long. Kind of like how we can't live outside this atmosphere and dwell on the moon for very long. And I'm going to get at that a bit later because there's connections here. There's parallels. Yeah. So, and it could have been when the moon was formed that, yeah, they formed their own bodies, physical bodies. They become more dense like us, or maybe not quite, but similar. And they had a form like anthropomorphic form, right? A human type form that just happened naturally, or perhaps because of the unconscious relationship between us and them, we still have these threads that are connecting with them. And another thing that Steiner mentioned was impulsive drives. These beings can influence them, or we have these impulsive drives. Perhaps I would add like fears and phobias from something that we don't understand, possibly because of this subconscious kind of split schizoid kind of relationship we have with ourselves, that we give these beings form. And so the whole grey alien reptilian, it could be us, like, are expressing a primitive fears and then sending up those threads and beaming it onto these beings, and they're actually being influenced by us. Or it could be they want to identify with that kind of form. Another thing is that, and other people have speculated on this or believe it, that they have a form of technology now that they're more denser and physical. They do have like flying craft, and they can build buildings and stuff like that, and hence the theory of the bases and buildings and the craft parked on the moon, possibly on the dark side of the moon. I'll get to that in a bit. Yeah, so just because they're not organic, it doesn't mean to say they couldn't manipulate rocks and metal and stuff like that and build stuff. And as I was saying, because of this subconscious barrier, I think that we potentially develop bad relations with them. I think this is just a natural cycle, and I hinted this, or I theorized this in the fairy veneration video as well. Because here's something very interesting. I think you'll find it interesting anyway. The abduction theory, the modern abduction theory, and the old legends too, with the fairy abductions, right? Thomas Sheridan and others have said that they connect that basically to the same thing and the same kind of beings. And I think Thomas Sheridan did theorize that the reason why the craft are there, it could be because they do have a technology that's evolving, right, like we are. So again, that's interesting. But the modern abduction, what's the incentive behind it? Why are they doing it? And because don't forget, we had at one point we were in direct communication with them, right? According to Steiner. So Also, yeah, I just made a note here. Um, Communication. It makes me think of Whitley Strieber's book Communion. Just the very title of the word. I thought of that. It's, the whole abduction thing is they want communication. They want to form some kind of communion between humans and them. But beforehand, with direct communication, like I'd say, let's say abduction wasn't needed, um, because they weren't being ignored. But this is a theory that because of this schism, this split, they went rogue, and they decided to act independently from us because we were acting independently from them because we were, as we are, engrossed in the intellect and that side of evolution and inventiveness, and neglecting the spiritual aspects of reality. Steiner calls these beings the Luciferic beings. I don't know if I mentioned that, but and they are not of the intellect, and they um, don't think that the intellect's any good for us. They want to kind of get us to link back to the spiritual. Um, but let's say these beings went rogue, started acting independently from us because they were no longer heard, and the whole contact with the whole UFO phenomena, abduction kind of phenomena, um, the whole intrusiveness, and being visited by them is a necessity. They believe because it's the only way that they can make contact. Because they believe that they must, no matter what, keep them in our minds. They must keep them self alive in our hearts, and even if that means terrifying us, even if it means like a mental rape, and a physical one as well. They believe it's a necessity, and it's kind of a weird theory, but they're trying to bridge this gap um, to try and resolve things as they were, so that we could exist in the old moon evolution with them. So they don't want this as a permanent thing. This is just a theory. Abductions, right? And so abductions and the I've watched and read like many like abductees, females, saying that they felt that they were impregnated by these beings, and they actually felt they actually had the symptoms of being pregnant, and they were convinced. And then they said that they had the fetus removed from them forcefully, and then later on they were shown their child as it was grown bigger, and they were encouraged to hold it and bond with it, um, and told that they can see it again a bit later and it's well and it's safe and stuff like that. Very, very strange. Okay, one of the theories is that they're aliens and they're a dying race, and so they're trying to use their genetics to preserve themselves. Like that's quite an interesting theory. What if it's nothing of the sort? What if they're trying to create a moonchild? They're they're trying to. This is the moonchild ritual, but it's not done out of consent. So the whole point is to bridge the gap, as I was saying, by literally, if they could put one of their souls in a human form, in a baby, and have it incarnate with all of the memory of the old moon evolution, then they could educate humanity. But they have to literally come down here and exist, as you know, and that's what they may be trying to achieve with all of this, as well as keep themselves alive in a being in our hearts, even if we're terrified of them. Um, I found that quite interesting, um, but it's possibly not successful because it's basically invasive and traumatic to the subject, and but it's still they attempt it. So it's funny how, when these people speak of contact, a lot of people talk about how it can get sexual, and how they're often aroused to orgasm, against their will and stuff like that. Whitley Strieber has spoken about that many a time. And that there is an impregnation and sex going on, and they're encouraging. So this has possible connections to sex magic and the Babylon workings of Parson, Crowley, and L. Ron Hubbard, and the Moonchild, as I was saying. But when it comes to them, there's this consensual, and it's from both sides. So both have consented. So they, as humans, have consented, and perhaps, they've asked permission by these beings, and it's a two-way process. So it's consensual, and that's, let's say, why it was successful. It's got to be a two-way process. You can't have an ignorant human and trying to achieve this like they've been trying to do. And on that, let's look at my side notes here and take you through as best as I can. It's kind of organised chaos here. Aiwass and Crowley. Aiwass, if I pronounce it right, who Crowley reported to have contact in, 1904. He said he heard a voice from a non-corporeal being, and I think the Book of the Law was told by this being to Crowley. So I have some notes here. So Crowley writes, we are forced to conclude that the author of the Book of the Law is an intelligence both alien and superior to myself, and most important of all, that this intelligence is disincarnate. So hinting at Steiner's Luciferic beings. It says Crowley's guardian angel. He later referred to him as his guardian angel as well. Some say that it was Crowley's higher self, but I believe from what I read, Crowley was convinced that this force, this intelligence, was independent of him, and it was guiding and influencing and teaching him. So it says Crowley's guardian angel, or wherever he was, whatever it was, he uses a human body to make his magical link with mankind, with whom he loves. So he wants to make a link with mankind. So that's hinting at what I was saying. It says here, in Magic in Theory and Practice, that was by Crowley, Aiwass is firmly identified by Crowley as the devil, Satan, and Lucifer. Okay, so Lucifer. Steiner's Luciferic moonbeams, but devil and Satan is an adversary, and so leaving the Christian concept behind, it's not saying that he's Christian devil, right? I'm sure you're kind of with me on that. That's that one out of the way. I'm just trying to organise this in some linear fashion for you so it makes more sense. We have the Babylon working rituals with Parson and L. Ron Hubbard, which was in 1946. Parson and L. Ron Hubbard attempted to usher in a magical feminine goddess into the world through a magical fornication ritual known as the Babylon workings. This ceremony drew inspiration from Crowley's Moonchild and attempted to use innate magic between Parson and a woman to conceive a spiritual world child who would thus usher in the otherworldly Babylonian goddess. The Babylonian working rituals, which sought to conceive a child of the astral plane, who would eventually usher in the goddess Babylon. So again, more connecting to what I was saying. And we have Crowley's Moonchild. You probably know this, the basics, but I'm just kind of guiding you through it as best I can. So Aleister Crowley's 1917 novel Moonchild. It says here, numerous acquaintances of Crowley appear thinly disguised as fictional characters, and the plot summary: a year or so before the beginning of the First World War. And I want to note also that Steiner said that the First World War was really caused by this schism, this inability for human beings to connect to the spiritual, to connect to the Luciferic realms, to the higher beings. And it was a being, Ahriman, as I may have mentioned, probably in other videos, that kind of guided or misled, let's say, man into the material. So his presence was through technology that we invented, basically, and he kind of used it against us, and kind of further cemented us into the physical. But there were other, I think Steiner was saying that it was also a big sacrifice to Ahriman, maybe an energy feeding ritual or something like that. It was sinister, but so I thought I'd add that in there as well. But going back to Moonchild, it says here, a woman is seduced by a white magician. This is in the fictional story, right? A woman is seduced by a white magician and persuaded into helping him in a magical battle with a black magician in his black lodge. So the Grey, I think he's the hero of the story, is attempting to save and improve the human race and condition by impregnating the girl with the soul of an etherical being, the Moonchild. What else have we got? Yeah, this is my thinking here. Again, I think this could be an act of peace and love to bridge the gap between these beings and us. So to bridge the gap between these, the old moon evolution and us. So that's what I was thinking there, with Crowley's Moonchild ritual. Aiwass and Crowley, did I have? No, already covered that one. Okay, I'm not sure how much memory this phone has, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this now and then continue the second part in part 2. So I'll see you guys shortly. Okay, cheers.